Part 7 of Masters of the Air is what happens when you have all four characters that acted at some point in time as the lens for the audience, um, all in one episode. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Before I talk about this episode, I just want to thank the viewers, and everybody that are watching the Masters of the Air series as I talk about it. It means a lot. You guys have left some very kind comments, and I can't stress to you enough how full my heart is reading them. So thank you all, and I'm glad to have you here. Part 7, Masters of the Air. Let's say that this is the episode that sort of acts as a respite or a bit of the calm before the storm. As we're coming up towards the end of the season, this sort of feels like that sort of culmination of what we had sort of gotten from a lot of high stress and high dramatic episodes, and then before we get to some probably another big aerial battle, as we have sort of seen in the trailers and promos from just the the intro to this, that at some point in time the Tuskegee Airmen come into play, and sort of we've seen now that that's sort of going to be the next episode. So this episode sort of acts as a our characters are spread, our four leads are sort of spread apart from each other. Some of them intertwine. Buck and Bucky specifically. We pick up at the end of the last where we saw Buck and Bucky reunite at the Stalag, which is come to find out the Stalag Luft 3. They are in bad way, but they are treated somewhat humanely in the fact that the Germans know that the Americans have some of the Germans held captive, and so they're not going to treat them harshly for the sake that they don't do that to their prisoners of war. But they're eating nothing but potatoes and turnips. That's all they get. That's the life. So they have to think on their feet and come up with new ways to make a meal and get by and eat. So stray cats ends up being the delicacy of choice. Not to everybody's knowledge, and some take that better than others, but that they have to do what they have to do to sort of at least get something new. Because if it's just the same things over and over again, their bodies are just going to shut down and start to reject that, and they just need some type of newness to go with their nutrition levels. But for the most part, hygiene and whatnot is provided to them, barring a couple of things. I think barring one, that they still have some access to know that their people are still safe, but two, barring that these Americans don't try to escape. Because I think if they do, then all bets are sort of off with the niceties that they give. But Buck and Bucky aren't just going to be left to their devices here. A lot of this episode is the two of them having let's use the Professor X and Magneto way of the same ideas. Like, we need to get the hell out of here, but a little bit of a different way of approaching. Bucky wants to hella high water. We need to get up out of here. But Buck is doing a little bit more calculated approach. Let's hear what the radio is saying. Let's hear what the world is saying to see if there's an opening or some type of change happening outside where we can kind of make that move, and someone may be coming on the way to help us. So there's a radio that the crew of this American team has sort of found and put together to get information from the outside about what's happening out there in the war for the inside. And they're kind of having check-ins from week to week. But unfortunately, the top of this episode, they have a check-in. They have some information, and then all of a sudden, the Germans show up to sort of raid rooms. They're kind of just having everybody lined up outside, and they're going to check everybody's room. And they find the do-it-yourself radio that they have confiscated. So now they don't have any ears to the outside world any longer. Buck, I think, says flippantly, "Oh, at least they didn't find the headphones." So their ways of communicating, or at least getting communication, is out. The one thing that bothered me the most about this episode, and it's just a nagging thing, is that Quinn and Bailey have made it back to the base. If you remember a few episodes ago, Quinn and Bailey are the ones who were who landed in Germany and had to sort of do the long legs and go get on the train and whatnot. And when we last saw them, they were kind of getting off of a train in Paris with a bunch of just Nazis on the train station, which seemed like that would have been the most harrowing part of their journey. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, because it was a fantastic episode, but we saw a piece of that and not the back half, and it's just odd that their return happened off screen as opposed to how much time we spent with those characters. I think you would have just seems just seems odd. I'll use that word to not spend the time with him to finish off that journey. It's a choice that I probably wouldn't have made, but it's a choice that they made, and so they make it back. Now, what that works is it is showing that there is an avenue for folks to be able to return home. And that sort of gives a glimpse or an eye point or a viewpoint that Buck and Bucky could make it back. And so that is why that's why they made it back, and that's why it's simple. While I would have liked to have seen the final piece, we got to spend some time with them. And I think because Buck, Bucky, Cross, and Rosie are sort of our major protagonists, we can't then also have Quinn and Bailey. So I think even though they did give us an episode with them, I think that was just sort of a one-off, and us to not get too attached. So even with them returning and us seeing it happens in the background, we see them, and Cross gives us the information. Cross gives us the information that, oh yeah, they made it back. So it while it played for so big for the episode, it played for so little for this because it no longer is the any of the four major characters' main viewpoint. The 100th suffers a major loss in this as well. Again, happening off screen. I don't mind the aerial stuff not happening on screen because it can become a bit complacent if you keep showing me aerial battle after aerial battle. But the airbase is seeing planes come in, and they notice that 15 are returning, but 15 of their planes are downed, and it's it's a hard scene to watch to see people open up their cockpits and you just see tons of bullets falling out, and you start seeing soldiers in various forms of injury, facial scars, facial burns, limbs missing. It's harrowing. It's a rough watch. It's the part of this where I think they've done a good job of showing you every sort of aspect of these flights. The uncertainness of going up in the air, how's that calm before you go up? I think the actual battles you've seen a little bit of every piece of it. This is when they first come home, and these people are going to see what's happened with their fellow officers, and they open it up and they just see just carnage, just pure bedlam. It puts a lot of this into a bigger perspective, but it just shows you um, the risk that people have to take to get up into those planes and go up in there, but also the just heartache that you don't know what you're going to get on the other side of those cockpits when you open it up and what state those folks are going to be in. But this day became known as Black Monday, where 150 men were lost on an attempt at an attack on Berlin. And in the monologue overlay, Crosby is talking about how the crews are getting younger. The inexperience is getting more. We're getting more people who don't know what they're doing up there in the plane, and the morale is plummeting, which we have sort of spoken about before as we in these previous episodes of the series. The folks are getting younger and younger. They just have no idea what they're just basically turning out new people. As the veterans die or go up there and don't make it, they're just finding new people. Whoever can say yes to putting on a uniform and getting up there, they don't particularly care who it is or how it's done. It's like, can you operate a plane? Cool, get up there. And so the morale of going back up there just isn't there. It's even worsened when they start telling them, like, cool, we're going to do the exact same thing we did before, just not on a Monday. In that overlay, though, Crosby mentions that with the morale being low, that he was just at a very low point. And he reaches out to Sandra. I mean, who didn't see that coming? And he reaches out to her more than once, more than twice. more than 3 times, more to the point he eventually starts to fall for her. He starts meeting with her and saying how much he can't stop thinking about her. He's infatuated with her. Um, it's unfortunate because their relationship is built on, I think there actually is chemistry between the two of them, but their relationship is also built on pain for him and just being just at his lowest, and nothing good can come of that. She sort of probably senses that. She likes being around him as well, but I would bet that she's aware that this isn't a healthy thing. That one, he's married. That's one piece of it. But two, um, this relationship is forming on him being so broken by seeing his folks keep going up in the air and half of them not returning. Buck tries to work on a new do-it-yourself radio, tries to come up with a new one, but it's just not working. While that's occurring, he and Bucky sort of connect, and he informs Bucky that I've been writing letters my entire time being here, and in that I wrote a letter to Marge and proposed, and she said yes. And so I would like for you, Bucky, to be my best man. And Bucky's like, yes, I would love to be. This piece is simple. It's them just kind of having, well, Bucky more so. I mean, Buck more so having a conversation with Bucky about what his life is. But it shows you why they're coming at the way that they're approaching getting out of the Starlight differently. Um, Buck's a little bit more calculated, and he has something on the other side of this that he wants to get out of. So no matter what, he wants to get out of this, at least in one piece, where Bucky's kind of like, let's go, guns blazing. I don't care if I make it out of here. Who cares? Because for him, he ain't got nobody on the other side. He so much as says that the reason why he kind of feels the way that he's like, maybe the approach that you're doing, Buck, is the right way. I don't have anybody to go home to. I don't know why I'm such a rush to get up out of here. It's just me. But that is because he doesn't have anybody. He's like, I can just go gung ho. But he's like, well, maybe your approach is perhaps the better way. Then they quickly are told that neither of their approaches matter anymore because all hell is broken loose. Essentially, 50 to 70 folks, Americans, have been building a tunnel underneath, just enough that it didn't kick up off the radars that they had for their sonar to see how deep it was. But they still escaped. On this walk that Buck and Bucky are having, they're called to the high-ranking official, German's official's office, and he basically lets them know that the majority of the folks that escaped have been found, and that 50 of them have been executed. Very matter of factly, very calm, but he's doing it so that he can prove a point and say, "Don't try to leave here again." He's saying, however you have to do whatever you have to do to the rest of the folks here, let them know that this is how this is going to be. Also, real quick, are there any Jews on your team in your in your squad? He's like, no, we're all Americans. Okay, cool. Just asking. I feel like there were some folks, and I'm sure this happened. There are folks that were even represented as Jewish, like look like they could be Jewish or have a name that appears to be Jewish. They're probably going to kill them just to prove a point because now they don't have the power anymore, and so they have to sort of reestablish that. So all the niceties that they had at the beginning of this episode, because a certain amount of people have tried to get out the way that Bucky probably tried to get out, would have tried to get out of. Now all bets are off, and they are going to shoot on sight. They were already doing some sort of cruel things to begin with, randomly shooting somebody who may have gotten a little too far out of the barracks, sticking it, letting a dog stick on people. But this was the extreme of that. So as Buck and Bucky are leaving, they're like, "Well, how much harder is it now for us to get out of here?" Like, yeah, the situation has gotten pretty dire for them, and so the walls are a bit more closing in on the ability for them to get out. And while it's possible, while we have seen the extremes that Quinn and Bailey had to do to get out, because we can see the back end of it, not entirely sure, but they made it home. So let's hope that our boys Buck and Bucky can make it out. Um, I will say that this is the episode where you really get to, I don't know, I've heard that Rosie is sort of like a big heralded person within the 100th. This is one of those episodes that sort of just puts the star on his back. It's like, oh, that guy, he's a real one. The 100th get another mission to attack Berlin the exact same way that they did before. And so a lot of those officers are like, what are we doing? Cross being one of them. Like, do we not care if they kill us all? Like, what are we doing? And unfortunately, they only have 15 planes to go back up. The 15 planes that return, that's all they have to go back up on this mission. So the rest were taken out on black money. This is all they have to operate. So this is what we're going to go up there with. The one difference is this time there are P-51 Mustang airplanes that are introduced to go along with them and sort of provide cover, and they do. These things give them an advantage or at least a leg up that they never have had before at any point in time in any of these battles. They get up there in the air. They see, like, to a distance, they see a bunch of planes that they can't quite make out. Then they realize that they're, as they use the term, crowds. It's a negative term, but that's what they use. But then the F-51s take over and like, cool, y'all do y'all mission. We got the cover, and they go and have it out with them, and they're able to drop their load, their payload, and drop the bombs on their site, and then return home. I think all but one. I think 14 returned back out of the 15, which is a much better percentage level than they have ever had at any point in time. These P-51 Mustangs um, are the real deal. Rosie returns to much praise. He's golden. He's the golden goose, and it's his 25th mission. He's done. He can go ahead right off into the sunset. There's nothing else that he has to do. So there's a little party that's being thrown. Everybody's celebrating, drinking, like, "Yay, we're good! Congratulations, Rosie!" And then a senior officer comes in and tells them that Rosie's fine. He did his 25. We can't change it after he's done it. His 25 are done. He's good to go. However, the mission number to ride off into the sunset from now on has been raised from 25 to 30. It's being done because just a little bit earlier, when I said crews are getting younger and more inexperienced, they at least want to send people who have some experience and are a little bit older before they start turning over the new people. But obviously, every time you go into the air, there's a lesser percentage that you're going to come back alive. But that's why they're doing it. On the flip side, these pilots and these military folks are not pleased at all with this. Like, they want us to die up there, and no one gives a shit. Like, that's what he's one of the folks, one of the army men is just fed up. It's like they don't care about us. They're just using us for their numbers, and they know that, like, we as more experienced, but they don't care if we go home. They don't care about our families. They don't care about our loved ones. They just know that we are better at flying the planes than those new kids they bring on that are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and have no experience and don't know any better. And so Rosie is about to leave. He's about to leave off the barracks, about to go right off in the sunset, and he sees that some of his own crew, some of his own people, having to go up into these missions and by themselves or with a rookie pilot. And that doesn't sit well with him. He's like, "Nah, I don't think I want to do that." And so he goes to his senior officer and just tells him, "I want another tour." And he's like, "Are you sure? Most people would take this 25 and get the hell up out of here. You've got it. What are you doing?" And he says, "I don't think that I can't sleep at night. I can't stomach the fact if I'm sitting here of the people that I sort of become my brothers. Some of it was in the episode before where he's like, I got to know them a little bit. I've had these war stories with them. I can't put them up in the air with a rookie pilot and feel like I've done all that I can do. So if they're going to go back up there again, I have to go back up there with them, and then we'll get to that 30 together." And so he said, I can't go home until the mission is done. Either way. So he knows that, like, I might die up there or we're going to get it all done. But either way, I can't sit at home on the sideline to do this. And I think some of this would be easy to just put into the fact that, like, oh, you think Rosie's just got a penchant for wanting to get in the cockpit. Like, he just can't get out of the cockpit. Always up there. But I think it's more in that last episode, he's become a family. He's built a bond with his crew. And he can't let them do this on their own, and he can't let them do this with a person that he honestly knows is a lesser pilot than him. It's like, so if they're going to go back up there, they're going to go up there with the best to make sure that they can get back down here with the best. His senior officer then tells him what the mission is. Basically, like, look, I'm going to tell you what this mission is. before we sign your papers for your next tour, and then you let me know if you still want to do this. That's how much of a sort of like I respect you. I understand what you're saying, but at least let me give you this option. And he basically tells him like, so the next mission is um, the bombers, our fleet, are going to be used as bait to draw out a ship while other folks can fire on them. Fire on them. The P-51s give us an advantage. We're going to use them, but we're going to need you guys to be bait. Rose like, cool. I understand the mission. Sign me up, coach. Put me in. And that's how this episode ends. So we have four of our leads, our four of our viewpoints scattered all over the place. Buck and Bucky are kind of at a point of no return. Um, Cross is kind of spiraling down into a sadness where he's doing some self sabotaging to both himself and his wife, his relationship, and to Sandra to a degree. And then we have Rosie, who just can't leave his team behind. Like he's done, but he can't leave his team behind. And what used to have been would have been the belief because he's such a sucker for he wants war, he's looking for that. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think he has created a bond with his team, with his folks, so strong that he doesn't want to see the worst happen to them. And if he can help stop that from happening, he wants to be a part of that. I think that's a huge growing lesson for who Rosie was, because I think before sort of vacation that you, if you will, that he would have, it would just be like, cool, I want to fight, I want to fight, I want to fight. Whereas now I think I want to fight for my brothers, which is it's a huge little character arc for him. Again, the thing that bugs me the most about this episode is not seeing Quinn and Bailey make it back home on their own. We still don't have any aerial battles. We have not had some in a while, so that is starting to stand out a little bit more. I do like's not the right word, but I do appreciate seeing this sequence of the plane sort of unloading from the damage that it took place. That's strong, but I do think we need to get another aerial battle. We're coming to the last few episodes, so I imagine there's going to be at least one, maybe two more big aerial battle sequences, but we have not had one in a while. So I think folks who have gotten into this show based on those might be a little bit longing for more. It may be going too slow for them. It's not there for me. I will say that the three episodes that I've been back to back to back that have dealt with sort of the dramatic pieces of this has been the weaker of the three. I think the previous two episodes were significantly stronger than this episode. The episode felt a little bit like outside of the Rosie piece, and then because the Sandra Cross piece, because it's such a small piece outside of his dialogue that's on top of scenes, that could have occurred in the previous episode. Like we all saw that that's where that relationship was heading. I called it. Yeah, they're going to be sleeping together. That could have been there. And then the Rosie piece is sort of the strongest piece in this episode. But I think when you're putting that with the Buck and Bucky thing, there's just too many stories happening with our main four leads, and they all kind of meander a little bit. The Rosie piece doesn't. There's a height, there's a reason, there's a purpose to what's happening there. But the Buck and Bucky thing, they are in the same place at the beginning of this episode that they are at the end of this episode, and nothing has changed. Same with Cross. Nothing has changed for Cross from the beginning to the end of this episode, other than now that he's butchering his marriage. Um, Rosie's the only one that's had some growth, and so for me, when that happens, that means okay, this episode may not have been as necessary for the entire storyline. And so some of this could have gone to episode part 6, and some of this could have gone to part 8, and 7 could have been sort of restructured. That's my sort of takeaway from this episode. I don't hate it. I don't mind it, but it's the one that I've liked the least since I've started watching this series. Doesn't mean I'm not going to continue on. Doesn't mean that I don't enjoy what I'm seeing, but out of everything else that I've gotten, it's the one that has been the weakest of them. But I do hope I see the Tuskegee Airmen are coming in the next episode. So no matter what happened in this episode, I don't. I that's what I'm looking forward to. Like that's you keep showing me that in the intro. You keep showing me that in trailers, and then I've seen the sort of trailers for the next episode. Tuskegee Airmen is where I'm gonna kind of like, okay, because you're at least introducing a new aspect into this fold. And I think what's happening is that so we've kind of hit that mark where these characters aren't growing anymore, and this is what we sort of are. And then we just fold in some new characters, and I think that'll help out a lot. I was hoping that Quinn and Bailey were that. Clearly, they've gone back into the background. So, what did you guys think about this episode of Masters of the Air Part 7? Go leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere the place podcasts. We're there this week. We will be talking about Dune. So, like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.